Hi, this is Andy of Andy's Personal Development, and we are currently live in the breakout room. So, welcome, and we love being here for you with quality and value to inspire and to transform. Remember, we are on Apple, Spotify, Google, Amazon, and iTunes. Today, as usual, we have a special guest to share with you for your development and growth and to live your better informed life. So, grab a cup, pull up a seat, and stay tuned for the introduction. Right here, now, live in the breakout room. It's the place for health, happiness, and prosperity. Stay tuned. Our next guest in the breakout room is author and professor, mother and wife, Lea Rachel. Seeking Forgiveness, Lea Rachel's new novel, tells the story of interracial adoption in the U.S. today from the perspective of a wife mother who adopts a black son and finds she has no idea what she is doing. The other publication is entitled The Other Shakespeare, and of course, Seeking Forgiveness. Lea is very proud of her latest publication, as well as her family. So, let's welcome, live in the breakout room, this inspired author and professor, our guest, Lea Rachel. Yes, and she is live today with us in the breakout room. Welcome, folks. This is Andy of Andy's Personal Development on the Love Bits A channel. And our special guest, Lea Rachel, is waiting for us as she comes into the studio. Let's welcome her. Hi, Rachel. Lea Rachel, sorry. How are you?
I'm great. How are you? Thank you for having me.
Oh, we thank you for taking the time to come and join with us and for making this show a reality. So, it's good to have you on. And we have some very interesting questions for you. But first of all, Lea, we want to know, how did you come into writing as an author? What was the thing that was passionate enough for you that you decided you need to put things into writing and have these publications?
Well, I have to say that writing is in my family. My
Uh huh.
grandmother is a published author, and my
Right.
uncle. So I think it's a little bit in my sort of family roots.
Okay.
And I've been writing since I was very young, and I it's almost like medicine for me. I find if I don't write for a few days in a row, I'm missing something.
Right. Right. Right.
So I do write. I try to write every day, and I have just for years and years, and I really enjoy it very much.
Wonderful. Were you referring to people like the name is, I think, Becky Bahar?
Yeah, yeah. So
Right.
that's my grandmother, and
Okay.
she's actually from the Turkish side of my family. She lived in
Right.
Turkey, and she's
And
famous. If you ever go to,
right.
if you ever go there, she wrote a poem once about the only city in Turkey that has both a mosque
Uh
and
huh.
a synagogue and a church. So
Okay.
she wrote about it, and now in the center of that city, there's a plaque with my grandmother's poem to like religious tolerance in the only city in Turkey that has all three religions represented.
Right. And Anthony Kosnick?
And that's my uncle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Right. And he wrote something quite in the late 1970s.
Yeah, so
Wow.
he was a Roman Catholic priest, and
Ah,
actually he
okay.
wrote a sort of path breaking book at the time about human sexuality
Uh
and
huh.
sexuality and Catholicism, and so it created a lot of waves. I grew up with teachers in middle school and high school saying, "I know you. Your uncle wrote that book."
Okay. Great. Wonderful. Thanks for sharing, Lea. Tell us a bit about your backhood days or your background days when you were a young lady. Could you remember some of your more fonder memories growing up?
Well, so I sort of mentioned that. Well, I don't know if I mentioned. So I grew up from a interreligious background. My
Mm-hmm.
father, as well as my uncle, my father had
Yeah.
been a Roman Catholic priest.
Yeah.
He actually left the priesthood, the Marial priesthood, when he met my mother, who
Yeah.
actually was a Turkish Jew who had just immigrated from Turkey.
Right.
And so they have very different backgrounds. And I grew up in a household that was Jewish, but at the same time, like my favorite nightgown was to wear my father's old priest clerical shirts.
Okay.
So I
Yeah.
would wear his shirt while lighting Shabbat candles and reading books. And so it was a very tolerant and sort of open childhood. And I like to think that I'm now raising my own unique interracial family, bringing
Mm-hmm.
together many
Okay.
worlds, kind of like how I grew up.
Okay, great. We're going to get to that in a little bit. Of course, we're going to talk about the family. But in terms of your stint at the University of Missouri St. Louis, how did that come about?
Well, so I always wanted to be an author, but
Uh
at the
huh.
same time, I'm very risk averse. I'm not
Uh
somebody
huh.
who takes a lot of chances. And
Okay.
in all honesty, I was afraid that I wouldn't be able to pay the bills as an author and that I would
Mm.
starve, the starving artist
Okay.
thing.
Understood.
So, I mean, I now wish I'd taken the chance earlier.
Mm-hmm.
But so instead, in college, I found out I was rather good at math and took a lot of math classes and became eventually a professor
Uh huh.
in economics. And so I'm a professor to pay the bills, and I enjoy it. I enjoy students and
Uh huh.
interacting with people as they're learning. But I do that to pay the bills, and the rest of my time I write and follow my dream of writing books and publishing books.
Okay, great. So tell us a bit about the first publication, the Other Shakespeare. What was the inspiration behind that? It's a strange name, but I guess the story would kind of depict and give detail about the idea behind the concept. But what inspired you to write it, and where did the name the Other Shakespeare come from?
Well, so the inspiration for that book came, I was actually on a train. I remember I was traveling from St. Louis to Chicago by
Right,
train, and
right.
I was reading Virginia Woolf book. I was reading A Room of
Okay,
One's Own. And
okay.
in that book, Virginia Woolf takes about a page, maybe it's a page and a half, and she says, you know, what would have happened had William Shakespeare been born with all his talent and creativity and
Mm,
inspiration, but born
okay,
as a woman and not as a
right.
man? What would have happened? And
Mm,
in this one page description, she's sort of not hopeful, and she says probably this female, you know, Shakespeare would have been denied an education, would have been forced into marriage, and probably it wouldn't have ended well. Well,
right.
I read that on the train, and I remember looking up and looking out and watching the fields go by, and I thought, I want to write that book. I want to
Okay.
write the book of
Uh-huh.
a female William Shakespeare,
Okay.
and that's why it's the other Shakespeare. It's the female Shakespeare,
Right,
and
right.
and the plot really follows what Virginia Woolf outlined, where you know, she's born and she has a lot of creativity and wants to write, but isn't allowed to go to school,
Mm-hmm.
and all the things that happen. And I actually did a lot of research. All of the characters, except for the female William Shakespeare, who is called Judith,
Yeah, yeah.
all of the characters are real. I mean, like the neighbors I mentioned in the book are the actual neighbors of William Shakespeare. The parents are his
Mm-hmm.
actual parents and siblings.
Mm-hmm.
So every single character in the book is historically accurate, except the invented Judith
Yeah,
Shakespeare.
right. Understood. Thanks for sharing, Leah. That's interesting. So you traveled a lot extensively: Turkey, Thailand, Peru, China, Europe, and you have written some short stories as well. Is that right?
Yeah. So I do, you know, so I've had two novels published, but I've actually written four novels at this point.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, one had agent representation, but we didn't end up selling it, and one I put to the side. But what I do is I write a novel, and then I usually need a break in between novels. And
Mm-hmm.
in between, while I take breaks, I very often write short stories and
Yeah,
essays, and
Yeah.
And I've had a few short stories published. I had one win a writing contest.
Okay.
And so I do write about various travel and other incidents in the short stories.
Okay. Wonderful. Thanks for sharing, Leah. So, what I want to do now is kind of shift things a bit and take you to a more personal and probably sensitive area in terms of what happened with your son, your adopted son. But before we get to that, how did you come to the place where the decision was made to carry out that adoption in the first place? What drove you to that?
Well, it's interesting because I would say most people, well, at least 9 out of 10, assume that I
Mm-hmm.
adopted because of infertility reasons, but that
Mm-hmm.
isn't the case, actually.
Okay. Okay.
It wasn't about infertility. What happened was I got married, and
Mm-hmm.
we were sort of thinking about having children, but in all honesty, both my husband and I were on the fence. We were like, should we, shouldn't we? And I
Mm-hmm.
couldn't decide if I wanted to be a mother and have
Okay.
children. And I had a friend at the time who assumed, again, there was an infertility issue, and she assumed I really wanted to be a mother. And so she pressed on me, oh, there's this women's group. You should go to this women's group and this support group. And it was a colleague, actually, and she was sort of bothering me, but I thought, well, I'll go once just to
Uh-huh.
get her off my back. And
Yeah.
I went to this women's support group, and women were talking about having children or not being able to have children. And this one woman brought up fostering to adopt. And
Mm-hmm.
the idea had never even occurred to me. Like it was like
Okay.
a lightning bolt.
Right.
The idea that there's other ways to become a mother and other ways to have children. And I remember I came home from that meeting and my decision had been made. I wanted to foster to adopt. So I remember thinking, if becoming a mother isn't just about me, it isn't just about like some family that I'm trying
Yeah.
to create, it's
Yeah.
also about the child. Then
Okay.
I wanted to do it. I sort of went from unsure to I want to do this. And so I obviously talked to my husband and asked what he wanted.
Right. Right.
And he was on board too, and we signed up and became foster parents.
Wow. Wonderful. And how was the experience in terms of the process and the procedure? Was it challenging? Was it difficult? And what did you learn as a result of that experience?
Well, it takes a long time. So you
Yeah.
do have to take classes and you do have to go through certifications and
Okay.
your home. And
Right.
so I believe the classes and certifications and things took almost 2 years to get through.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah.
And then you have to wait for a placement, and that can take a while too. I remember that took over
Mm-hmm.
a year as well. So it took a long time.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't say it was arduous. It was sort of just more time consuming.
Okay.
I feel like you asked another question, but I'm drawing a blank on what the
No, I'm just thinking, what did you learn from the experience in terms of the process that you had to go through?
Yeah. No, that's a
Yeah.
very, very good question because actually I address a little bit of this in the very first chapter of my book in the
Mm-hmm.
sense that, we signed up for classes and, and, when we signed up to become foster parents, this was
Uh-huh.
before Michael Brown. This was before a lot of, certainly George Floyd and a lot of the
Yeah.
awareness
Yeah.
and things that are going on. And just
Okay.
I think the phrase white privilege hadn't even really been coined or certainly wasn't in usage a lot at the time. And so like I remember going to classes and learning that there was a lot that white parents needed to learn if they were to adopt across different races, and that there
Right.
were some people who didn't believe interracial adoption should even happen. And I remember being very
Mm-hmm.
surprised. I was like, well, I mean, isn't adoption a good thing? Like so it was a learning experience. It was
Yeah.
my first awareness of white privilege and the things I needed to learn. And I
Mm-hmm.
knew that going into adoption, any adoption, you have more issues beyond birth children because you have issues about who are their parents and questions. And, adoption, let alone
Yeah.
interracial adoption, has extra layers. But I
Okay.
did learn that there's, it's a responsibility. There's a lot of layers, and if you want to become a foster parent or a parent in an interracial family, you need to be cognizant of what you need to teach yourself to do a good job.
Okay. Okay. Great. And but some things happened along the way, and it inspired you to entitled information that was unique to you and your husband in terms of the experience. But then you put it into a book entitled Seeking Forgiveness. And you basically is reaching out to your son to tell him something. What was that deep motherly thing that you felt you need to say to him through the publication?
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's interesting you say that because I do think of the book as sort of like a love letter to my son. I mean,
Right.
my own mother died when she was 50. My father at 50. My parents died very young, and
Hmm.
so I still miss them. And I sometimes think,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, if my mother had written a book about me, I would have that to be able to go back to and read
Yes.
and look at.
Yeah.
And you know, I like to think, you know, years from now, if I'm not around or if my son's off at college, you know, you can glance over and see that book and know that somebody, you know, wrote about him. And
Yeah.
so it is like a love letter to my son. To be honest, the book is more about motherhood. So it is
Yeah.
from the mother's perspective.
Hmm.
And it's you know, even a little bit less from like the parents. I mean, I write, my husband's in there a little bit, but it's really more about a mother-son relationship and the mother's love for her son. And
Yeah.
it's about seeking for, it's titled Seeking
Hmm.
Forgiveness, because I found that the hardest thing about motherhood is never knowing if you're doing it right. So
Okay.
there
Okay.
is there is no answer key. There is no like guidebook where you can look up on page 37. You know,
Right.
what do
Right.
you do when your son steals a pack of gum from the gas station? You know, and what do you do
Hmm.
when at 12 years old he says he hates his life? I mean, what do
All
you
right.
do? Like, so you do your best is what you do, as I'm sure all
Yes.
parents know. But you're bound to make mistakes,
Yeah.
and you just hope that your child will understand and forgive you one day. And so that's why the book is about seeking forgiveness, because the mother is trying her best, but she
Hmm.
is making mistakes,
Yeah.
and she just hopes her son will forgive her.
Wow, that's very touching, very interesting. So tell me something. How are you able to combine your personal commitment and at the same time continue to teach at the level that you're doing? How do you make that balance?
I I don't sleep a lot. That
Oh my goodness.
to be honest, that's not a good thing to say, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I've never been a big sleeper. I know my uncle told me that too, that it's rare he got
Uh-huh.
more than 5 hours of sleep. So
Yes.
that made me feel better, that I think it's in my family to not
Mm-hmm.
be big sleepers. But I don't know. I like to do stuff. I don't like to. I mean, I watch some TV and some movies, but I really like doing things. And so
Uh-huh.
I work during the day, but then actually I wake up early in the morning and write, and I'll sometimes write at night too. And I don't know. I just work on things. I don't know.
Oh my. I get the feeling that there are many more publications, many more writings to come out of you. Am I right about that?
I think so. I hope so. That's the plan for sure.
Right. So what do you see for the future as far as your writing is concerned?
Well, I do like writing all sorts of fiction. So, you know, I've got the
Mm-hmm.
historical fiction on Shakespeare, and then I have this more, you know, sort of narrative autobiographical fiction.
Yeah.
Um, so I don't put limits on what I might do in the future.
Yeah.
I do feel like anything could inspire me, from, you know, reading like a Virginia Woolf book and getting an idea. I do
Mm-hmm.
know that I've gotten, because I have sort of an interesting background in terms of like the religious combination stuff, and
Yeah.
I also have some other interesting things in my background. A lot of people have told me I should write a little bit more sort of narrative memoirs, things
Okay.
that go into
Yeah.
my childhood. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
thinking about that. We'll see.
Sounds good. Sounds like something to look forward to.
I hope so.
Yeah. Great. So tell us, Leah, your students, knowing that you are a published author, you're someone of some repute, how does that impact upon the effect that you have upon them as a professor? Does it make a difference at all? Do they seek that kind of inspiration from you as they may aspire themselves to be published authors?
You know, I think it does for some students, and not for others.
Okay.
So you get a range, excuse me, a range of students,
Mm-hmm.
and there are definitely some students who, well, they're so busy with their own lives. They have a job.
Mm-hmm.
They sometimes have families,
Yeah.
and so they, you know, come to your class and they're interested in your class, but they don't come to office hours. They don't pay attention much beyond that. So they might not even really honestly be aware that I've written books. But then you do have students who, you know, classes just started here a week ago. And after the first day, I had a student on day two raise their hand and ask me about my books and my family. They looked me up
Yeah.
online, clearly.
Right.
And so for some students, and every semester there's usually at least one or two that I think I make an extra personal connection with them because of this.
Mm-hmm.
they'll come to office hours and talk about it, or even talk about their own dreams or things
Yeah.
that resonate with them. So
Right.
I think that for some students, it really helps create personal connections, which
Mm-hmm.
is just so heartwarming. That's part of the joy of teaching.
Right. Right.
But I'm not going to say it's all students for sure.
Okay, great. Great. Wonderful. Thanks for sharing, Leah. In terms of the community, in terms of where you live, are you involved in any community development work with young children who are looking to be authors in the future, or any other organized community development work?
So that's an interesting question. I mean, well, it's funny you mentioned it because just yesterday I was
Uh-huh.
asked to be on a panel for a St. Louis writing workshop group.
Okay.
So I think it's in September in a few weeks. So I'm going to go to a writing workshop. I think it has about 60 or so members, and they
Mm-hmm.
are all authors or want to be authors or potentially going to be published soon authors. And so I know I'm going to be part of a panel that talks about having already been published, what is it like and whatnot. So I am doing that just in the next month. I
Okay.
haven't done anything for young authors. That's an interesting question. It wouldn't be at all a bad thing to pursue. And I am involved I've always been involved in my own writing group, and I've been involved in my community, volunteering
Mm-hmm.
in my district and in my county. But I like your idea of working with children in writing. I haven't done that yet.
Okay. Great. Thanks for sharing. So, if there's any advice that you would give to young aspiring authors in terms of getting themselves published, what's the best way to do it, how to put their stories together, the level of interest that they need to commit,
Yeah.
probably even discipline the hours, the time. From your experience, what would you say to them? What advice would you give to them?
First, I would say believe in yourself.
Right?
So if somebody else, because again, I love and I miss my mother, but she was part of the reason. She was like, "Can you make a living at that? Or are you
Ah,
gonna need money?" And so I think she was worried, and it helps make
uh-huh.
me worried. So
Okay.
if you love writing, believe in yourself and pursue it. Is the first thing I
Right.
would say.
Okay.
The second thing I would say though is know that success in anything takes dedication. If you
Mm-hmm.
want to look good, you have to go to the gym and watch what you
Mm,
eat. And if you
okay.
want a healthy relationship with a significant other, you have to communicate and talk to them. It takes effort. And writing, I do believe good writing is basically rewriting and putting in
Right.
effort to.
Right.
There isn't
Yeah.
anything I've written that doesn't have at least 5 to 10 drafts.
Okay. All right. Great, wonderful. So we have come to basically the middle of the show already. It has been quite interesting sharing with Lea Rachel, and we're just going to go on a quick commercial break, but we'll be right back. Don't go. FindRadioGuest.com, the place to click to find guests to interview for free. And if you're a radio show booker, podcaster, talk show host, or television producer, then this is the place to get podcasts and radio interviews or promote your books and products as a guest expert sponsor. FindRadioGuest.com. Check it out. Hi, people. This is a special invitation for you to join our community. Yes, we're inviting you to join our community for 2022. What's in store? Well, what we want is your feedback on our content and our guests, but more so on what you need to be inspired and transformed from your current condition to one of happiness, health, and prosperity. So drop us a line and reach out. Help us to better help you achieve your goals. So, people, inbox me at www.facebook.com/mddreamer/. That's www.facebook.com/mddreamer/. Or send me an email at lovebitsa@gmail.com. That's lovebitsa@gmail.com. We love hearing from you as we build our partnership in growth and development, and we look forward to your communicating. Help us to help you to live a better life in personal growth and development from Andy's personal development. The breakout room. So, Lea, in terms of what is happening in the world today, we see so many negativity, wars and rumors of wars, and not so good news about the economy and stuff. What would you say to people out there in terms of the mindset that they should have towards what is happening? If you had the opportunity to give some advice to the people in the world, particularly, what would you say to them?
That's an interesting question. It's a great question. I would say try to focus on individual small acts of kindness. So I
Mm,
notice when things are getting me down, and world events definitely get me down. There are days I have to stop reading the newspaper. But if I then go outside and help my neighbor, like bring her groceries in, or, just help somebody I know do something, I feel better. Small acts of kindness can help you, help people around you, help center you. So I'm not going to presume to know what it's like to be in a war zone, like in
yeah,
Ukraine, let's say.
yeah, yeah.
But I can imagine even there, if you can make a small connection to another human being next to you, it will
Hmm.
help you get through the day.
Okay. Yeah, great. Thanks for sharing. I appreciate that. So, with regards to in terms of what you're doing as a writer, did you ever think about any other commitment to another career line, or was it just writing passionately, being that author, and
Yeah.
complementing it with the professorship at the same time?
Well, yeah. So being an author has always been my number one goal from the time I
Okay,
was a child.
okay,
The professorship was number two. But it is interesting because I had lunch with my fellow professor colleagues a few months ago, and I asked them, like, was this their first choice job?
mm-hmm.
And actually, for all of us, it was number two.
Oh,
One colleague wanted to be a private investigator, and one
okay,
colleague wanted to, in an ideal world, be a stuntman
mm-hmm.
on movie sets. So every,
Okay,
everybody had a number one, and my number one has always been writing books.
okay, great, interesting. What's your favorite style of writing?
Well, I love literary fiction. I love
Mm-hmm.
literary fiction the best. I mean, I love character development where you really get inside a character's head. As a
Right.
child, I loved the Russian authors because they really would get, Crime and Punishment and, obsessed inside your own head.
Mm-hmm.
But I also love and that's why I say literary fiction, not just fiction, because I love when I read a book and like a single sentence or a single description
Yeah.
just reads like poetry and stands out, and I have to stop reading and sort of look up and
Okay.
absorb that sentence. So
Okay.
I love really good prose and descriptions and characters.
Yeah, interesting. Thanks for sharing. And who's your favorite author?
I would say right now my favorite author is Anne Patchett.
Uh-huh.
She's rich. I mean, and of her books, Run is the book I would recommend if anybody wants a recommendation of
Okay.
something to
Okay.
read. So
Okay.
she's my favorite. I could name other authors I love, but she's probably because again, she's got good writing that has
Mm-hmm.
moments of, real beauty and also interesting stories with characters you want to get to know.
Okay, great. Would you consider doing screenwriting in the future? Is it something that you have considered as an option?
I mean, I haven't considered it only because no one's asked me to. I mean, so right now I really am focusing just on writing but I will say that I feel like I'm reasonably young and you never know what the future holds. And so
Hmm.
you never know.
Yeah. So many possibilities, right?
Yep. Never say no. You
Wonderful.
don't know what'll
Yeah.
happen.
Yeah. Never say no. Do you have a mentor, someone that is that quiet, still voice that you turn to when you are faced with questions that you can answer yourself or decisions that you need to make about important things? Do you have that mentor person that you turn to?
I love your questions. You have such good questions.
Okay.
I would say both my mother and my grandmother. So, I do
Mm,
find it indicative that I wrote a book that, while it's about interracial adoption, I really also feel like it's just as much about motherhood and like the
okay.
motherhood. And
Yeah.
so, my mom died young. I still miss her to this day. At least I
Hmm.
had her to my mid 20s. And my
Yeah.
grandmother was alive longer than that, and I had her for a long time. And I knew my great grandmother, and I heard many stories about her. I just feel like the line of women in my family is very strong, and I
Mm-hmm.
still think of them and the things that they've said and their voices when I'm
Okay.
making big decisions, for sure.
Wow. Okay. Great. Wonderful. So, in terms of having someone be mentored by you,
Mm,
are you currently in that process? Are there any one or two persons, that you see you can share some extra stuff with in terms of technique
yeah,
because you see something promising in them and you see that they may have a literary future?
yeah.
Is that the reality with you? Can you align yourself to
So
that?
I would
Yeah.
love to do that. I mean, I think you're right. I probably really should look into
Uh-huh.
pursuing more mentorship of like young authors. I mean, I will say in my professor job,
Hmm.
I definitely am at the phase of my career where I'm mentoring younger scholars.
Yeah.
I've served on like outside tenure review committees, and I've been giving a lot. I'm just at that stage where I am doing that, and I
Yeah.
am also purposely trying to especially mentor women and minorities and those underrepresented in my field. I'm making a particular effort for that. But in terms of writing, I am not mentoring anybody.
Okay.
And I bet that would be very worthwhile. So
Yeah.
that is another good thing I should pursue.
Okay. Wonderful. Do you speak a lot about the publication in terms of how you promote? Are you doing any book talks and stuff like that?
Yeah, so I mean, I do have. I seem to have about one interview a week, at least one or two interviews a week, and I have a couple coming up in person ones. So mostly they've been sort of over the internet or Zoom or podcast or even written. I do have one or two in person coming up, and I'm hoping to just build more. We just started really pushing the publicity of the book in the last month or so, and it doesn't actually fully get published till October. This is all the pre-publicity. So I'm hoping to do more and more and build on wonderful shows like yours to get even more invitations. No, no.
Here we go again. Technology. Okay. So where were we? I can't even remember because I was on the phone there, a bit upset, trying to sort out some stuff there. But
Technical difficulties. I think we all understand.
okay, what were we talking about before that happened?
What was the last question I was answering?
Let me see. It was concerning something specific with regards to, was it community work or
um, well,
no?
in
I think it
mentorship,
was
then you have to.
mentorship. Yeah, mentorship.
Yeah, I think that was the last question. I
Yeah,
don't know how much you got of the answer, and I
I
sort of
got a good bit. Something that you were looking at and thinking about, but you were not actually doing, and you were thinking about, yeah, it's a good idea. Maybe you could try that based on your current student population that you have. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Great. Wonderful. All right. Leah, we're coming to the end of the show. We just have a few minutes to go. And I'm just gonna ask you a couple quick questions. It's an either or answer. I don't always use this line of questioning, but it's a little fun and also get to know a little bit more about the person on the other side.
Okay.
So it's about three questions, and the first one is it's either or. And you're gonna tell me why. Peanut butter and jelly or ham and cheese?
Peanut butter and jelly. It's a childhood comfort food that makes me happy.
Okay, I get that and I get the answer. I get the reason why. Okay, America's favorite pastime is baseball, but then some people just can't pass up Sunday night football. Which one is it for you?
Sunday night football. That's more at home with my son prefers football for sure. So that would
Oh,
be something we could
okay.
watch together. Yeah.
Okay. I'll tell you this. Out of every 10 person that I ask this question, at least 8 say the NFL. The NFL brings it home every time.
Not
Okay, in
surprised.
terms of vehicles, would you prefer a BMW or a Mercedes Benz?
Oh goodness. I have no idea. I can tell you that my son keeps wanting us to buy a Tesla, but that's not one of
Uh-huh.
the options.
Right, 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 right.
I'll pick BMW. Just I have a friend who
Okay,
has one, so but I don't really
okay,
know.
okay, wonderful. Thanks for sharing those information with us. And now I would give you about a minute so that you can share your social media hashtags and also the information with regards to seeking forgiveness, where they can get it, how they can get it,
Yeah.
and stuff like that. So go
Thank
ahead.
you. So the most important information is probably my writer's website, which is www.learachel, just as you see it spelled with no spaces, LeaRachel.com. From there, you can find links to the Amazon pages and Barnes and Noble pages where you can buy my books, both books. Seeking Forgiveness won't be, it's on pre-order. It's officially published October 18th of this year. But you can find the links to the Amazon pages there, Twitter. I'm at Lea Rachel Author. So you can find me there as well. And I think those are the main things. I'm on Facebook too, Lea Rachel Facebook. But I would say my writer's website and Twitter and finding my books on Amazon and Barnes and Noble are the best places to go. So I'll just say again, www.learachel.com.
Okay, great. Thank you. Folks, you have had Lea Rachel in the breakout room speaking about her publications and her life as a professor, as a mom, and a wife. And we have had a wonderful time with her despite the interruptions. So, we want to thank you so much for being on the show. And we wish you all the best going forward in the future. And so we'd like to say thank you, thank you, thank you so very much. Godspeed in all your endeavors, and may you continue to add value to the lives of the people that are involved in your life, including your students. So, until next time, this is Andy of Andy's Personal Development saying so long, shalom, God bless, namaste. Take care, folks. And remember our watchwords: health, happiness, and prosperity. Bye for now. You can stick around for a minute, Leah.